So my number two film is Requiem for a Dream from 2000. This is directed and co-written by Darren Aronofsky, starring Jared Leto, Ellen Burstyn, Jennifer Connelly, Marlon Wayans, and Keith David. The IMDb plot summary: the drug-induced utopias of four Coney Island people are shattered when their addictions run deep. So for me, the theme of in terms of the anxiety is something actually you touched on earlier in this episode, which is that loss of control, where you don't really have control over your life or your decisions. And in this movie, it's exemplified by the drug addiction that all four of the main characters have that lets them or causes them to lose control of your life, because now it's just basically driven by trying to get that next hit, whether it's heroin or, to Ellen Burstyn's character, the weight loss drugs. But the other part I think that this movie too touches on in terms of anxieties I've definitely felt, because I definitely, like, much like you, loss of control is something whenever I feel that a little bit, I start not like a full on panic attack or anything like that, but I'm very uncomfortable. Like, I like to feel like I'm always in control. And the other thing that I definitely can relate to as well is that a lot of times having a dream or something that you want and a goal that is very far away in your life, and too focused on that and not enough on the present, or when you think that's slipping away in any kind of way, you start to panic, which definitely, again, the title is Wrecking for a Dream. So that's another big theme in this film too, is something I definitely can relate to a lot. That's something I sometimes think about the future too much, and then it gives you a sense of loss of control in a way, because all you're fixated on is, well, what is that thing 10, 15 years out? What is the ultimate thing that I want to do? Instead of just being focused in the moment, being present and enjoying the life that you have, instead of trying to think too much about some new destination of some place you want to get to, which also each one of these characters too, which we'll get into more when we discuss the film, has a dream that they want to achieve. And that also, I think, gives them sometimes unhealthy desires. They take unhealthy steps to try to achieve that dream, and none of them get it. I mean, this is probably one of the more depressing films ever made, but curious your thoughts on the film, if you'd seen it before, and then we can dive more into the analysis.
Yeah, I had avoided this movie up till now just based on the posters and the stills of Ellen Burstyn with, crazy hair and everything. And I was like, oh, this is Darren Aronofsky. This is going to be, grating and a hard watch and all of that, which it is. But I'm glad to have finally watched it, because all the themes that you said, they do come to life for sure. One of my kind of personal anxiety things, which didn't make it on the list, is, I mean, it sort of does with Rachel getting married, but it's about when people make poor choices. And I'm always like yelling from the inside that, why are you doing this? You could be doing something better. And this movie is all about that for sure. All these people make very, very poor choices across the board, some on their own volition and some because they can't, because they are under the influence of drugs so hard. And it's sort of sad and depressing to see that, because they actually have a lot going on in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the sad truth for a lot of people, I think, that it's so difficult to see what you have and just focus on the dream, right? And what you don't have. And there's a very thin line between a dream that aspires you and inspires you in a positive way versus not. And this is all about the negative side of it, of course. There's also a very interesting thing, and I guess commentary about television and what that does, and all these game shows and consumerism and such, that it can really obsess all of us, that we're all, I mean, there's a reason why lottery tickets still exist. I've never played one.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been into gambling. I've been to Vegas many times, but which is sort of why it's a fun place, but I usually avoid it, because in my mind it sort of is about that. And I have no problem, like, you do you, of course.
Sure,
but
yeah.
But it always makes me a little bit sad from the inside, where I'm like, oh, this is what you're constantly thinking about, that, oh, what if there's like the silver bullet, golden ticket that might solve my problems? And I get it, where that comes from, of course, because we live in a world that is unfair for the most part. But then there's also hard work and other ability and luck and so many other things that play a role in terms of what might fix your situation. And we as humans, I mean, that's our survivalist instinct as well, right? We're always trying to find the way out, or the easiest path to survival. So I think this movie has a lot on its mind, which is, as a movie, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, because you'd watched it when it came out and you've seen it since. Me watching this movie for the first time now in this year, 2023, it sort of feels like a school student project movie where there are a lot of ideas and all these kind of, repetition, almost like animated drug consumption things with the light, eyes flaring up and what have you. Like it happens again
Mhm.
and again. It's very effective. And of course, this induces a lot of anxiety. And I thought about those images a lot even after I had watched the movie. But in the process of watching the movie, I was like, okay, I get it. Like this is kind of very, student projecty. That said, I was still very impressed by it. I think I'm more impressed by the movie and the filmmaking and the performances than loving it. And I don't even know if you can love it because it's such a hard watch, if you will. But yeah, I think to me with movies, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, is that it takes a while for this movie for you to develop any kind of sense of care for who these people are, because the movie just dives into
Oh yeah,
all
right
the stuff
away.
that is happening. And
Mhm.
for a while I was like, why do I even care? Why should I sort of sit this? But then the movie sort of like harangues you to actually do care because things get so bad. And I did care then by the end of it. I think that scene when Jared Leto comes to visit his mother, Ellen Burstyn, and she's already been on the pills, and
Mhm.
he is excited about this kind of other thing that he has going on and she's excited about, and just the anxiety and the kicking of the drugs and the drama of their past relationship. I thought that scene was very powerful and very moving, and it was amazing. But other than that, yeah, this movie definitely wants to ratchet up the anxiety, and I can see Darren do that, and that's the
Definitely.
part that I don't enjoy. I want it to be more effortless. I want to, just live the lives of these characters with them, not be told to do so.
Yeah, just in case people haven't seen the film before, we'll talk a little about just the techniques that he used, and I definitely want to touch on
Mm,
the things you were talking about. So there's a lot of handheld shots, but then not. There's a lot of split screen, especially in the beginning, that is very disorienting. There's fisheye lenses. There's this
mm-hmm.
great technique that was sort of popularized by this movie for a while and then stopped, where the filmmaker hooks the camera up to the person. So when they're moving
Right.
around, they're frozen in the center of the
Prototype.
screen, but everything around them is spinning, which is a thing even some MTV show stole after this movie. But at the time, it was really a revolutionary thing, at least that
I
I haven't
bet.
seen. And then the movie starts with longer scenes. And then by the end, the scenes are like 10, 15 seconds long. There's a lot of editing. So it definitely berates you for sure and hits
Yeah.
you over the head and kind of forces you to feel, because you can't help but feel because of the filmmaking techniques that were involved. Even the sound
Right.
design is a lot of loud noises, then silence, then
Right.
there's breathing, then there's the score was one of my favorite scores we'll get into in a bit, but it's definitely relentless. And just especially towards the end, it's just loud, sort of like banging, banging, banging to make you feel. And yes, that definitely, I mean, at the time, I saw this in the theaters, my first Aronofsky movie. This was like a revelation to me when I saw this at
I
18.
bet.
It was a movie, it was also like wasn't really released because it was unrated and they were trying not to get the movie out there because the distributors thought it was too dangerous or whatever. So there was a little
Mm,
bit of that mystique to it too. And, I watched this movie a ton in college and would listen to the score over and over again for years. I haven't seen it in maybe like 10 years, and definitely it still for sure affects me. And the ending of this movie, I think, is super powerful, which we'll get into when I talk more about the
mhm.
dreams piece of it. But, Aronofsky at his worst can come across as if he's trying too hard, like a student filmmaker. And I definitely can see that a lot in this film for sure. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. And when he works, it really works. When he
Right.
doesn't, it definitely comes across as, yeah, a little bit amateurish. And you can for sure see that in this, though, again, it was beginning of his career, it was only his second movie. So you
Right.
give him a little bit of a pass than you do on more recent ones, where I feel like I felt that way on a film like Mother or something that I felt was the same sort of, again, very kind of amateurish. So I totally get what you're saying
Mhm.
of the movie is very manipulative. That's the
Right.
best way to,
That's
to
the
kind of
word.
describe it for me.
Yeah.
It's incredibly manipulative, that even if you didn't care for these characters, you still feel impacted emotionally because of all the filmic techniques that are
Right.
at play here, which is a reason why, like I said at the outset of this podcast, like I don't consider myself an anxious person, but I put this movie on and I feel that. And yes, it is all these techniques which are definitely at play here, but it were once I broke it down and had more self-reflection and dug into these underlining themes of loss of control, which definitely gives me anxiety, and this whole idea of focusing too much on your dreams and too much on the future, not being in the present, can cause you anxiety because you never know whether the future is going to happen. So you worry about that. You're worried about that. And I think this movie, when with each of these characters, which we'll get into in a second, they have their dreams, and that I think leads to their downfall as much as the drug addiction does too. So I'm not surprised you felt that way coming to at this movie now, that it does feel a little bit, yeah, student filmy, if you want
Yeah,
to put it like that.
yeah. And in that sense, a little, I guess, disappointing too, because I'd heard so much about Ellen Burstyn's performance, and
Hmm.
many still argue that she should have won that year.
She
I
should
forget
have. Yeah.
who else was
Doesn't
nominated,
matter
and
who,
she's
but she
very
should have. Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
But I do think that because the filmmaking techniques are at like a 352,
Hmm.
it does actually overtake the performance. And it's sort of hard to draw the line between what is the filmmaking technique or the director's hand versus the performance, because I wish there was more breathing room given to her, because this is such an incredible lifetime part, you know.
Hmm.
And if the movie just had allowed her to kind of breathe even more, this performance would have been, one for the books. But she's still amazing in it, there's no question about it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, the movie leaves the audience with not a lot of room to breathe either. I mean, there are a couple
No.
quiet moments that are affecting, but I actually was looking back on it now. Again, it's been 10 years, which is still thinking all the performances across the board. Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, Ellen Burstyn, and Marlon Wayans too. Like they're all giving incredible performances that must have been very difficult to do a lot of the the what happens in this movie is probably very difficult on the actors as well. But getting back to just those dreams, I just want to touch on that,
Mm,
and also respond to what you said about the infomercial thing, which dawned on me for the first time actually in this most recent rewatch. Ellen Burstyn is dreaming to be on TV. She's an old lady who also wants to look good, and maybe she's dreaming of her youth, I think, and wanting to capture that adoration to be on TV on this game show that she keeps watching. So that's why
mhm,
she gets addicted to diet pills. And Jennifer Connelly's character has a desire to be a clothes designer and open up a design shop, and that's what she wants to do, but she needs the money for it, and that's why she gets involved with drugs herself, and then eventually prostitution. Jared Leto's character, I think, is just his dream is to be with her and be happy with Jennifer Connelly. And there's these great scenes where they flash forward to him walking down the pier, and she's there at the end, and that's he just wants to
mhm,
be happy with her. And then Marlon Wayans, which I think this gets the least screen time, but honestly for me is actually the most effective towards the end of the movie, where I think he just is craving his mother's love and just remembers back to being in his mom's arms. And you see all these things because they're obsessed just with the end goal and not necessarily the
mhm,
destination to get there. They all make choices and shortcuts and get addicted to drugs and, again, prostitution and all these different things to try to get to this dream, and they're not focused on the reality. And the end montage to me still is like incredibly effective, where you see each of these characters wrestling with the fact that their dreams are now dead. Jared Leto doesn't have an arm anymore. He's alone. So Jennifer
right,
Connelly's totally out of the picture. Jennifer Connelly's there clutching that the drugs, because her with surrounded by just tatters of all these designs that she had, showing that her life is totally in
sure.
shambles. And Marlon Wayans basically being sick in a prison, curling up, and you see this his mom superimposed in the background, trying to be in his mom's arms that he'll never be able to get. And then Ellen Burstyn, again, just her friends crying when they see the state the drug addiction has put her in when she's in that mental institution. Just incredible. And each of the characters are getting during that montage, sort of moving into the fetal position, sort of like going back to this time when things are innocent and safe, because they've totally destroyed their entire lives. And that is an extreme version of why a dream is something that can be dangerous to have and can cause you anxiety, that I've definitely felt too, of like, oh, what, I'm not going to get this thing. Oh, I want to get this thing in 10 years. And, it's giving me a little bit of anxiety, but it's better just to kind of be in the present and just focus on
Mhm,
your happiness now and not some end goal. But
mhm,
the infomercial thing was interesting, because I think that was a framing device where Ellen Burstyn's characters
yeah,
watches infomercial, and there's these sort of fantasy sequences where she's on the show. And I think that, again, just speaks to how dreams can be fake and a false promise and a scam in a way, in the same way that the infomercial sort of culture
true.
is too. Like, oh, they're selling this juice drug or something. I don't even know what the infomercial was supposed to be, some juice thing. But that's not going to work, because all those things are a scam. And the same way that these dreams that she's trying to get to are also, a false promise, just in the way the infomercial pieces were. So I don't know, that connection didn't come to me until I saw it for this
Yeah.
rewatch. But
No, I couldn't agree more. Because I think most people deep down, they sort of know that, yeah, this drug or this like exercising weird machine,
right,
or, whatever you're buying on QVC and such, or it's not going to actually give you what you're looking for, but it's the hope of it,
right,
or it's the
mm-hmm.
escape of it, that, okay, for a little bit, if this makes me feel okay, then why not?
Yeah,
And that line between the little bit to the point that you're totally in it is actually much thinner than you think. That's what the movie highlights, that it's sort of see the progression or really the digression of these people over the course of time, which is not a lot of time actually. It's
like a
crazy.
year, I think, right?
Yeah,
It's basically
how
they have
fast this
seasons. It's
happens.
broken up into seasons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's a very one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen, I think. And I just want to mention again, like the score, I think Clint Mansell's score, just incredible. That main theme, which now was used in like the Lord of the Rings trailers, and it's sort of become larger than even this film. But every time I hear that, it just brings me right back into like the depression and the anxiety and everything this movie brings to me. But for some reason, I did listen to it a lot while studying in college. It was something I enjoyed putting the score on a lot. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.